In this video, we'll look at the REST controller methods for finding and adding an employee. So again, with our big development process here, we'll focus in on these steps here of getting a single employee by ID and also adding a new employee. And this is primarily for the REST controller methods. We already did this work for the services and the DAOs already. Okay, so now just doing a checkpoint here on our real-time project as far as the list of API methods. So we've already completed the first one here of get to read a list of employees. Now in this video, we'll focus on actually doing a get for a given employee ID for a single employee and also doing a post to create a new employee. Now let's look at the application interaction between our REST client and our REST controller. So with the REST client, we'll do a get /API/employee/employee ID, and it'll return that single employee, in this case, David Adams. Now let's look at creating a new employee, right? So to create a new employee, we use the post method, and in the JSON body, we give the actual information for the first name, last name, and email. And since this is a new employee, we're not passing over an ID or a primary key because that'll actually be generated for us on the back end by the database. So then we'll get the actual response back. So they'll basically echo the response, and they'll also include the actual new ID or the primary key that was generated by the database. So this looks really good. I like this. Now, a couple of things here just as a refresher or a reminder. So when sending JSON data to Spring REST controllers, we have to make sure that we send over the correct HTTP request header. And that header is content type of application/JSON. So we need to configure our REST client to send the correct request header just so it processes the data accordingly. Now again, as a refresher here, we're using Postman as our client. So once we have the UI up for Postman, then we click on Body, then we select Raw, and then we choose the content type of JSON application/JSON. And based on these configs, Postman will automatically set the correct request header. Okay, so in the next section, we'll actually move into the IDE and we'll start writing some code. Okay, so we're moving ahead with our development process. So here we're going to focus on the REST controller methods to get a single employee by ID and also add a new employee. Let's go ahead and open up our employee REST controller.java. And let's expand this window here. And so this is step 4 of reading a single employee. So we'll make use of a get mapping and we'll read the employee by the employee ID. So I'll set up a get mapping for /employees/employee ID as a path variable in curly brace. And the method signature is getEmployee. You take a parameter for a path variable as an int employee ID, and it returns a given employee object. And then I'll simply delegate these calls to the employee service. So I'll make use of the employee service.findById, and I pass in the employee ID. And also I'll just add a little if then check here to check if it's null. If it's null, that means that we didn't find the employee in the database. And so we'll simply throw an exception here. And if everything's fine, we simply return the employee. And that's basically it there for the coding for get employee by a given employee ID. So this looks pretty good. Now I can actually run our application and test this out here. So I'll just run this as a Java application. All right, so let's go ahead and swing over to our browser. And I see that I have Leslie Andrews with ID of 1, Emma Baumgarten of ID of 2. So let's just test this out here. So /1 for Leslie, it should return Leslie. Success, this is awesome. I like this. This is exactly what we're looking for. And let's try it for ID of 2. And that returns Emma. Sweet. All right, so this is working. I like it. I like it. Now, one thing I want to do is actually also test this same thing in Postman, just to see how things work over on the Postman side of things. So I have Postman open. I need to give the URL, so I'll just do a little copy paste from my browser over here. Swing back into Postman and paste that. All right, so that's the ID of 2 right now. And if I send that, we should get Emma coming back. Awesome. Sweet. Awesome. Great. So this is working just the same in Postman also. So this is great. Pretty excited. Woohoo. And let's just go ahead and add a new tab here and let's just get all employees. So I could paste that same piece and just take off the ID. And it should give me everyone in the list. Okay, great. So same thing we saw in the browser. So Leslie, Emma, and so on. So this is cool. Great. So we're in good shape here with that method implementation for getting a single employee by ID.